Hello and welcome to my true crime channel. Thank you to all my subscribers and returning viewers, and a warm welcome if you're here for the first time. So today's case takes to Green Bay in Wisconsin in the USA. It's the tragic and senseless murder of a young man named SHAD THYRION, who was savagely murdered and then dismembered in his own basement bedroom by his best friend, SHABUSSINESS. And all this was done while his mother was upstairs. And not only that, but his mother would be the one to discover her son SHAD's completely decapitated head in a bucket at the bottom of the basement stairs. Now, as always, I mean no disrespect to anyone involved in this truly awful case. It's a hard case to listen to, so I'm going to give a trigger warning for the whole of the case. And as always, viewer discretion is definitely advised. I've been told I can waffle on a bit at the beginning of my cases, so let's jump into it. So, who was SHAD THYRION? It's such a shame that there is not much information out there on the victim, SHAD. But as always, there is a plethora of information out there on the perpetrator, being SHABUSSINESS. So what little I found out about SHAD: he was born in 1997 in Green Bay, Wisconsin. He was 24 years old at the time of his horrific murder. He was reported to have attended Bayport High School, where he did meet SHABUSSINESS and they become very good friends. He was an avid camper, enjoyed camping, he enjoyed games and spending time with his family. He's been described as very kind and compassionate, who thought of others before himself. He was quite a talented artist, very artistic. He also enjoyed wood carving, and I've took the liberty of having a look at his Facebook page, and on his page it's quite evident that he enjoys and loves music, because a lot of his posts were music related. SHABUSSINESS was born in Chicago on November the 23rd, 1997, and was raised by both her parents. The family moved to Wisconsin when she was in the 4th grade, and this is where she met SHAD. Her mother, Maria, died in 2009 from cirrhosis and alcoholism, and Taylor was about 11 years old at the time. And in 2022, only a year prior to this incident, that her brother died in a motorcycle accident. So she's had a lot of loss. She's had experienced some loss in her life. In regards to what she was like at school, she didn't get into really that much trouble. I mean, I think she was expelled in her senior year for fighting with another student, but there's nothing significant or impactful that happened in her student days. Taylor and SHAD, they met in middle school, but they began a romantic relationship when they were in their senior year, which lasted for approximately about 2 years, after which the relationship moved from boyfriend and girlfriend to becoming really good friends. Taylor later describing SHAD as my buddy in police interviews. I'm just going to refer to SHABUSSINESS as Taylor from now on, because it's a bit difficult to keep getting the pronunciation of her surname right. Anyway, so Taylor later moved to Texas to finish her schooling, and she lived with her paternal grandparents. She was there with them for about a year. Between the ages of 7 and 14 years old, she was under psychiatric care as an outpatient. She was diagnosed with ADHD, and at that time she was diagnosed with depression. She was prescribed an antidepressant. In 2012, when she was 14 years old, she spent about 3 days in an inpatient psychiatric care setting. She was experiencing thought disturbances, delusions, suicidal ideations, depression, and at this stage she was diagnosed with a bipolar 1 disorder, and she was prescribed Seroquel, and she was also diagnosed with a mood disorder. Now, 2 years later, in 2014, she was again admitted to a psychiatric inpatient facility, again for only 3 days. She was prescribed Abilify, which is an antipsychotic, and lithium, which is a medication prescribed normally for those people that do have bipolar diagnoses. It was at this point it was also noted that she was started to use marijuana, and this was on a daily basis. In 2020, Taylor met and married Warren SHABUSSINESS. Now, he was a dealer and user of Taylor. Not unsurprisingly, she soon became addicted and never fell. There were reports that Warren was abusive and quite controlling, and at the time of Shad's murder he was incarcerated, but he did speak out from jail in support of Taylor, insisting that she is mentally ill and that he would stand by her forever. Now, on the 22nd of March 2021, when Taylor was 23 years old, she again was at the ER department, complaining of hallucinations, paranoia and delusions. She was drug tested, which came back positive for not only marijuana but also methamphetamines. From there she was sent to a psychiatric inpatient facility and she was given a 6-month commitment order. And to my viewers and listeners who are tuned in from the USA, correct me if I'm wrong, a commitment is where a person is said to be either dangerous to themselves or others and need inpatient care and assessment. So you've got an emergency and an involuntary commitment, a short-term commitment, which is 24 to 48 hours, or there's a long-term commitment, which is 6 months, which is, I'm assuming, it's in parallel to what we have in the UK, where you can be asked to go into hospital for an assessment or for treatment. We have like a section 2 and section 3 where you're to stay in hospital basically, and you can't leave the hospital. However, I've noticed the difference between the two, whereas in the UK you can be given medication without your consent, whereas in the USA I believe I've read that they can't actually give you any medications without your consent unless you have been deemed to not have capacity. During this inpatient period, it was established that Taylor had been non-compliant with all the medications, so she wasn't actually taking her medications, and she also had a positive drug screen as well. According to witnesses that took the stand, she was given a 6 months commitment. I'm a bit confused because she only stayed 21 days within the hospital setting, so I'm unsure whether it was, whether the rest of that 6 months was to be continued out in the community. Forgive me for not knowing how it works in the USA. Anyway, the discharge at the end of 21 days from the hospital, they said that she wasn't psychotic at the end of the 21 days, so she may have been when she first went in, but she was obviously using certain drugs that can make you psychotic. But she was given a diagnosis of drug abuse disorder, and this information come freely from Taylor because she reported to psychiatrists that she was injecting meth up to 9 times a day. As Taylor's use of the drug became more problematic, we saw evidence of sort of chaos starting to emerge in her life. She had several run-ins with law enforcement. She was charged with battery on a police officer and resisting arrest after she was allegedly behaving strangely and was found walking in the middle of the street. Now, police received reports of a woman seemingly under the influence of drugs who was knocking on doors. When they arrived and asked what happened, Taylor said she was not sure and she was on a different planet right now. Don't smoke drugs. So she then allegedly told officers that she had just shot up and showed them the track marks on her arms. Now, at some point, Taylor allegedly kicked at the officers when they tried to stop her from walking into oncoming traffic. Now, moving on into 2022, Taylor and Warren gave birth to a child, a boy, who currently lives with his grandparents and I think has done since birth, both not been in the right place to take care of a child. Her husband Warren suggested that she was experiencing postpartum depression after the birth of her son, but there's no evidence of this in any of her medical records. But throughout all this time, Taylor maintained a close friendship with Shad, and according to her father, was also able to hold down jobs. Sometime on the 22nd of February 2022, Taylor borrowed her roommate's minivan and went with a friend, Scott, to go to pick up Shad at his mother's residence in Brown Country, Wisconsin. They picked up Shad and they all went to buy ice and weed and pick up another friend called AJ. AJ would later testify in court, one of the most bizarre witness statements that I've seen on the stand. So Shad, Taylor and AJ went back to Shad's mother's house to the basement where Shad would sometimes stay. It's unclear whether Scott was also with them at this time or had been dropped off. I believe he'd been dropped off. So Shad and AJ smoked weed while Shad and Taylor also talked meth. AJ then left the residence, leaving Shad and Taylor alone in the basement. Now, they continued to smoke ice and trazodone intravenously, an antidepressant. Now, on the 23rd of February 2022, Shad's mother and her boyfriend, Steve, were awoken from sleep after hearing a loud bang of a door closing. Now, the mother, I'm not going to give her name. She's obviously a victim in this case, so I'm not going to give her name or details. Shad's mother went down to the basement where she knew that Shad would sometimes stay. She got to the bottom of the stairs, bottom of the basement, and noticed a bucket, a black bucket at the bottom of the stairs with a towel draped over it. She said it hadn't always been there. She found it odd, so she lifted the towel off to reveal her son's head in the bottom of the bucket, along with his genitalia. Now, she quickly ran up the stairs and told her boyfriend that her son's head is in the bucket in the basement. The boyfriend, who testified in court, said at first, like, he thought that the mother was hallucinating or having some sort of mental breakdown. Mum's boyfriend went down to have a look because Mum wanted him to clarify what she had just seen. So Mum's boyfriend goes down and his eyesight wasn't very good. He did look into the bucket. Either he couldn't make out what it was or his mind blocked it out. Either way, he couldn't really confirm it. So they both went back up to the stairs to their bedroom where their phones were, and the boyfriend called 911. When told that mother had seen her son's head in a bucket in the basement, even he was unsure of what he was dealing with. I mean, you could tell by the questions that he was asking over the 911 call that he was trying to rule out whether the mother was hallucinating or again had some sort of mental illness herself, because I think even it's not a call you really expect. So I think the 911 operator was just trying to rule out that she wasn't hallucinating, basically.
County Public Safety, how may I help you?
Yes, I'd like an officer at 829 Stony Brook. Girlfriend just woken me up and swears that she found her severed head of her son in the basement.
Okay, can you repeat the address, sir?
829 Stony Brook.
Okay, S-T-O-N-E-Y?
Is it EY, right? Yes. No E. Just L-Y.
Is that a house, apartment, or duplex?
It's a house.
What's your phone number?
My number is 327-3748. My name's Steve.
327-3748?
Yes.
What's your last name, Steve?
Hendricks.
Okay, tell me what's happening there again?
I have no clue what's happening with my girl. Swears that she's found her severed head of her son in the basement.
Did you go down there?
In a bucket. I went down. I can't tell what the fuck it is. Part of my language. I'm kind of a little freaked out.
Okay, did she just wake up and say that?
Yeah.
And whose head is it?
She's claiming it's her son.
How old is her son?
24, 25.
Has he been missing, or?
No, yeah, he was here yesterday with some chick, and then all of a sudden nobody's here. And she came up to use the restroom a couple times, and she keeps calling and calling, and now she's saying that she hears the phone down there too.
Okay, is she with you right now?
Yes, she's upstairs. She's a little freaked out, and I don't know what to do.
Okay, all right, stay on the line. And you said you went down there, correct?
Yeah, and I lifted the toe, but I can't see very well, and I can't tell what the hell it is.
So there's something in the bucket.
There's something in the goddamn bucket there.
Okay.
If she won't look again, I don't know what the hell, man.
Do you think she's hallucinating, or do you think that?
I don't think so. I went down and there's something in the damn bucket. I don't know, man. She's a little freaked out and kind of freaking me out.
What's your girlfriend's last name? What's your first name?
Can
I talk to her?
Yes, you can.
Hello?
Hi, Tara. So can you tell me what's going on?
Are you positive my son's head is in a bucket, a young bucket in my basement?
What makes you think that?
Because I looked in the bucket.
What did you see?
Exactly what I told you.
Okay, where's the rest of the body at?
No idea.
Okay. When's the last time you saw your son?
Well, I guess today is Wednesday, so I picked him up from his dad's on Monday. And because he doesn't normally stay here, he's going to stay here for a few days. Got a bunch of laundry, he was here a couple hours, then he left with Taylor, and they had some big Taylor.
Who's that?
Girl, Taylor Coronado.
You know how to spell her
Girl,
last name?
Coronado. No, not exactly. But it's the common spelling from around here.
All right. That is
He
correct.
went to middle school and high school with her.
Now, Shad's mother and the boyfriend, they sounded really calm on the 911 call, which I probably attribute to the shock. I mean, finding your son's head in a bucket in your house, wow. I mean, it must have been horrific. So police were dispatched to the home in Stony Brook, Wisconsin, where Shad's mother reported that she last saw her son with his best friend, whose name was Taylor SCHABUSSINESS. Now, after talking to Shad's mother and the boyfriend in the kitchen, one of the police officers went down to the steps and into the basement. When he got to the bottom of the stairs, he indeed noted that the black bucket was there, had a covering over the top of it, so he lifted that off and peered in with his torchlight, and he could see a severed head and other organs inside the bucket as well. Now, the following body cam footage, which was worn by by one of the responding officers who dispatched to the address, you could see them in the basement, looking inside the bucket, confirming that there was an actual human head inside of it, along with genitalia. So they'd flash the light in, have a look, walk away, go back, flash the torchlight in there again, have another look, walk away. They did this several times. It was obvious that they couldn't even believe what they were actually seeing.
I know you're busy over there, but this is actually what it's going to be. It's not going to be a 961 thing or a 96 thing, so we're going to need more units here. Supposed to be. Was that Fred one? No, for right now.
After looking in the bucket several times, the police confirmed that there was, in fact, a human head in the bucket, and they got on their radios requesting that crime scene investigators actually come out to the scene. Now, Shad's mother gave Taylor's name, and it was the last person that she saw of her son, and police tracked down Taylor at her apartment building. Now, when they got to the apartment building, officers noted there were blood-stained footprints leading from the minivan that she was driving up into the entrance to her apartment in the snow. So there were blooded footprints in the snow. Before police officers actually got to the door, Taylor came out to the front of the apartment, came out to the door. She was seen to have blood still on her hands and on the clothing she wore. They were blood stained. When police asked, does she know what they were there for? She replied, there's probably a warrant out for my arrest. So just have a look at this video.
Is this blood? Does this look like blood to you? Or am I just tripping? Bloody footprint? You see this right here? Hi, Taylor. How's it going? Officer Russell with the Green Bay Police Department. Just make sure you ain't got nothing on you here. With Taylor.
Contact with Taylor.
Taylor, you have one more for your wrist. Just put your hands behind your back, quick.
Anyone else in your apartment?
You got blood on your hands here, too. No, on your hands. Okay, yeah, we're gonna have to.
What apartment is it?
What apartment are you in?
Do you have it? Adam, can you come up? You got somebody to get up here.
On the double.
Which apartment?
One is what they came back to. Yeah, go. Guys, hurry and get here now. Watch this window right here. Gun. Go in here. Come to the back of the apartments. That's where we are. You come over here. 2 more will be fine. If 84 is here.
Hands up!
You have contact with the mail.
Hands up! Walk out towards me.
Have a seat.
All the traffic. Out towards me. Get out of the house.
Who else is in the apartment? Be straight up. Tomes? Who else? Just Tomes? Is he armed?
Look out.
Nobody's armed?
Nobody's armed.
You sure?
I'm sure.
Bring up police! Everybody get here! Announce yourself now!
Go ahead.
So as you saw in the video quickly there, she was immediately placed into handcuffs and taken into the police station for questioning. Taylor's clothing that she was wearing was removed, obviously for forensics, and photographs were taken of her hands. She was given a forensic suit to wear throughout the interview. Police observed also that she had a deep cut to one of her fingers. This was obviously photographed as well. Now, in the interview, Taylor was quite calm and very forthcoming with information in regards to what had happened to Shad. I mean, at times she was like smirking, smiling or laughing as she told the investigators all what had happened and, you know, how Shad's head came to be in a bucket. She said that she was at Chad's in his basement. They were smoking drugs. They started to sort of have some foreplay. I don't think she said it got to full sexual intercourse, but they was having foreplay. And in the foreplay, she used a dog chain collar and put this around Chad's neck. Now, Chad was laying prone, so that's face down on the bed. She was straddled on top of him on his back, and she had put the chain around his neck. Now, she even confessed that she started to pull tight on the chain and saw Shad was even turning purple, that he started to have some blood just coming out of his mouth, and to the point where his tongue was even protruding. She admitted that she continued to strangle. Despite this, she continued to strangle Shad with the chain for several minutes, and added that she liked the feeling. She was enjoying it. She said she liked the feeling she got when strangling another person, and she said she didn't stop because she wanted to see what would happen. Taylor continued to describe in graphic detail what happened next in the basement. So while Taylor was actually in an interview room being interviewed by police, there was obviously other investigators also at the scene, wanting to know where the rest of Chad's body was. Now, at the scene, they were obviously looking around the scene, and they were actually looking for a complete body. But as the interview with Taylor would go on and progress, it was relayed back to the people, to the officers that were at the scene, that it wasn't a body, a whole body they were looking for. They were looking for parts. What Taylor was telling the investigators at the police station was truly horrific, so I'm going to give a pre-warning here because this is not for the faint-hearted at all. Taylor told investigators that after Chad had died, she laid with his body on the bed, cuddling him for a while. A bit weird, but then she went on to say that she engaged in sexual activity with Chad's deceased body for about 2 to 3 hours. Namely, she played with his genitals and she took a sex toy, namely a dildo, and penetrated Chad in his anus and in his mouth. So after 2 or 3 hours of doing that, she was fondling him and everything. It was disgusting. Taylor admitted that after this point she realised that she needed to discard the body, obviously because she didn't want the body to be found. So her intentional plan was to dismember and remove body parts from the scene. These admissions by Taylor will contradict the defence's story later in court when they tried to say that she was not in control of her actions due to her mental defect or illness, i.e. her insanity plea, because her recall of what she had just done, was on point. So that was going to be difficult for the defence to try and navigate around. Now, Taylor was able to recount in great detail how SHAD had died and how she had dismembered him. Warning, a bit more graphic detail coming up. Taylor said that SHAD's body was still on the bed, so she positioned him so that his head was hanging over the edge of the bed. She said that, well, it wasn't actually a bed, it was like a couple of mattresses stacked up on each other. She said that she got a blue bucket, a blue torp, which she put underneath SHAD's head. Then she went to SHAD's kitchen, his own kitchen, took his own mother's kitchen knives, 3 of them we believe, back down into the basement, and began to decapitate SHAD's head with these kitchen knives, collecting all the blood from his body that would run into the bucket below, which she then emptied the bucket, and obviously there was some human tissue in there as well, down the shower drain. This would account for why, when forensics were a bit perplexed at, if this dismemberment had taken place in that basement, there would have been a lot more blood. But this explains why there was not that much blood. So she then set about dismembering the rest of SHAD's body, collecting as much blood as she could, disposing of the parts in various bags and holdalls and rucksacks and carrier bags around the basement. Taylor told police that she was even nodding off during dismemberment. She relayed in an interview that there were bags of body parts, where the bags of body parts were within the basement, so she directed the crime scene investigators and the at the scene directly to where all the evidence was. At one point during the interview, Taylor made a disturbing comment saying, you're going to have fun trying to look for all the organs. So not only did crime scene investigators find mutilated body parts of SHAD within the basement, like I said, in various bags, they also found at least 3 kitchen knives which still had blood and human tissue on them. Taylor said her intention was to remove all the body parts from the location. However, in her own words, she said, I got lazy. She said this statement a couple of times during her interview, I got lazy. Taylor told police that where they would find evidence of drug use, some weed which is in the basement. She also told the police where they could find the dog chains used to strangle SHAD. Taylor specifically said that she wanted to take the mutilated head of SHAD and his genitals with her. But that didn't happen. She left them there at the scene. But she did manage to put some things. She loaded a part of a human thigh, SHAD's thigh, into a minivan in a crock pot box, empty crock pot box, which seems a bit ironic, really, doesn't it? That was in her car, but that's the only, with some organs as well, but that was the only parts of the body that we know of that was actually removed from the scene. Taylor cleaned up the scene as much as she could using bleach wipes before leaving the basement and driving off in the minivan back to her own apartment. Now, not surprisingly, Taylor was carted off to jail to await a trial. Now, while incarcerated, Taylor was observed to display some bizarre behaviours. I mean, to be fair, she was coming down off meth, so it could account for it. Or, on the other hand, at this stage, was she mentally ill? She was seen on one occasion smearing faeces and menstrual blood on the walls of her cell. She displayed instances of severe anger and violence towards others. And then at other times, for quite a lot of the time when she was in jail for a period, she was actually non-verbal, so she just refused to speak or wouldn't speak. Now, whilst awaiting trial, she was prescribed risperidone, which is an antipsychotic, when she had her first pre-trial hearing, which was on February the 14th, 2023. You may have already seen this video. It's out there quite a lot on the internet, where it was a pre-trial hearing and her lawyer was actually sat next to her, and without provocation, she was in handcuffs, but without provocation, she went to attack her lawyer. He defended himself and Taylor was restrained by court officers. I'll quickly just show you that clip now.
Rachel, call. Because they're bringing 7 in.
After that, subsequently, the lawyer withdrew from her case, and the judge agreed that he could do this. So Taylor got a new lawyer, and she went to trial in July of this year. Now, she pled not guilty by reason of insanity, NGI for short. I'm not an expert on the law, but I would have thought, given all the evidence against her, including her own admissions of guilt to law enforcement, that he would have advised her to plead guilty. And if he did, which I'm sure he did, then I question the motives of Taylor to want to plead not guilty and take it to trial, especially considering her presentation throughout the trial, which I will share with you later. Correct me if I'm wrong here, because Taylor pled NGI, there were two phases of a trial. Now, one was for the actual offences, which were the first-degree intentional homicide, mutilation of a corpse, and third-degree sexual assault. And the second phase of the trial was to determine whether she had capacity at the time of or during the crime. Now, both trials were riveting. I watched them both in full, and I've never seen a defendant acting so bizarre and animated with their facial expressions like this before. Taylor would smile, laugh, make odd facial expressions throughout the trial, all while directly looking into the court's live camera feed. If her defence lawyer had told her to remain emotionless while in court, she definitely didn't listen to him. Now, witnesses from law enforcement gave detailed statements and facts, including the police officers first on the scene to see the decapitated head of Shad in a bucket. Taylor sat at the defence table, smirking, smiling at different points of law enforcement's testimony. When medical examiners got on the stand and testified, confirmed that the body of Shad was dismembered by a range of different kitchen knives which came from the home, Taylor was again seen smiling and looking around when crime scene photos were being shown to the court. When photos of the dildo used in the crime were admitted into evidence and the photograph shown, Taylor was, once she saw the picture, she was laughing. She laughed and did very little to conceal her amusement, to be fair. I just want to say about the poor defence lawyer. I mean, there was no real defence or angle that he could come at, really, when cross-examining witnesses on the stand. The poor guy could only affirm or clarify what the witness had already said on the stand. Well, to be fair, the only other thing he could have said is no questions, Your Honour. Very hard job. Anyway, Taylor's father took the stand as well. He's incarcerated at the time, so he came in to testify on his daughter's behalf, and he said that he was worried about Taylor, and times in the past she would act not in her right mind, and that on one occasion he himself even took her to a mental health facility for treatment, as he was concerned for her mental health. The mental health professionals that took the stand, there was an expert witness from the defence. To be fair, I thought she was a little unstable in herself. She detailed Taylor's mental health history, which included inpatient treatments, diagnosis and medication history. Some of that history which I detailed at the beginning of this video. She testified that Taylor was incompetent at the time of murder, and she supported the NGI motion. Now, the prosecution offered up their own witness, a mental health professional witness, psychologist, who questioned Taylor's diagnosis of bipolar, which she'd been given in the past. They said that Taylor does not warrant a diagnosis of bipolar because her symptoms were inconsistent over time. But drug substance disorder was suggested instead as being more appropriate, as well as a possible antisocial personality disorder. The psychologist appointed independently by the courts basically agreed with the prosecution's expert. They also added into the mix that they suggested that Taylor was malingering, faking symptoms, and both of them did not support the NGI plea. A friend of Taylor's called AJ, we can refer to him as AJ, I'm not going to say his full name. Now, he's took the stand and gave testimony. Now, he's known Taylor and Shad since middle school. The three of them were friends, and they would sometimes hang out, but he bizarrely described himself as the runt of the pack, which I thought was a bit odd. But during his testimony, he was quite odd. He said his memory wasn't good and that he had mental health issues, and asked the bench to be patient with him. Fair enough. His answers sometimes didn't correspond to the questions that were actually being asked of him. He would often go off on a tangent and forget the original question. He did say that he was with Taylor and Shad just prior to the murder, and said that him, Taylor and Shad were, quote, chopping it up. which is a phrase I've never heard of here in the UK, but apparently it means just chatting, chilling. When he said this, chopping it up, Taylor could be seen visibly laughing, trying to hide her laughter by picking up a water cup to try and cover her mouth. I'm assuming Taylor found the phrase chopping it up quite amusing in relation to how she dismembered the and chopped up, as it were, SHAD Tyrion's body.
What's up? Are you going to hang out? And then basically I went over to the apartments, and when specifically when I got there, we were just chilling, chopping it up like how we always do. And basically I was like, Taylor was asking like, do you wanna hang out with SHAD? She was asking me like for consent to hang out with SHAD, to bring him over, and I was like, yeah, that's fine, that's cool.
To finish AJ's testimony on the stand, he was questioned by the defence, who were basically, as we know, we were going for an insanity plea, was asking him basically, was acting any different or acting bizarrely or out of character in the run-up, the days prior to the murder, to which he said, no. Take a look at this clip.
Okay, that's just a little bit too out of my polymath, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine. But you did all hang out together and you drove over to Michael Thyrion's house. Is that your testimony?
Michael Thyrion?
Yes.
I think, like, all I remember... I don't know.
Okay.
So
You're not good with dates, correct?
I'm better with dates, just not, like, recently up for, like, the past 5, 10
Okay.
years, so...
That's fine. So, prior to you being told that SHAD Thyrion was deceased, the days before you were told that, you were hanging out with SHAD and Taylor, correct?
Yes.
And did you notice anything odd about Taylor as far as her mannerisms, her eyes, her speech, anything like that?
No.
Did you have any feelings that she was acting weird when you had contact with her? Bizarre?
No.
Okay. Had there been occasions where you've seen her and you felt that she was acting very odd or unusual?
Judge. Relevance.
Mr. Freilich? Well, I think it goes to his observations of my client, Your Honor.
Well, then you need to narrow down with it for a time frame for him. So I'm going to sustain the objection. Ask another question, Mr. Freilich.
Okay, sure. Mr. Yenna,
Yes.
in the week before you had contact with the police where you talked to the officer, had you saw Taylor Schabussines at that period of time, is that fair?
Yes.
And when you saw her, was it just one time or was it several times? Do you
It
know?
was only one time.
Okay, and that one time when you saw her, did you observe her to be acting in any kind of bizarre manner?
No.
Okay.
This trial was not really a whodunit. Taylor, she'd confessed, but it was rather a question about what her state of mind was during the murder. But let's take a look at some of the evidence. The police recovered the 3 kitchen knives which were left at the scene in bags with some of the SHAD's remains. They were blooded and had remnants of human tissue on them, as well as DNA and fingerprint evidence from Taylor. The dog chain used to strangle SHAD was recovered. Evidence from inside the minivan where body parts were also found. Her admissions to police interviews, and obviously eyewitness, SHAD's mother placing her at the scene just prior to the murder. Now, there was also forensics searches done on her phone and her other electronic devices. Now, this has been spoken about quite a bit in the media, in the news, and this is where this comes from. She had made 24 internet searches just prior to the murder, referencing Jeffrey Dahmer. Now, we all know, I'm sure, if you're watching this type of video, then you know who Jeffrey Dahmer is. And also, there was a photograph on her phone with a selfie with a picture of Jeffrey Dahmer next to her face, and she's smiling broadly. Coincidentally, Jeffrey Dahmer was also from Wisconsin as well. So, and he also murdered and dismembered his victims. So it seems she had a bit of a fascination with Jeffrey Dahmer. By the way, make of that as you will. Some people are saying that she wanted to be like Jeffrey Dahmer. Some say she was, fixated on him. I don't know. I don't know whether this is true or not. I'll leave you to make your own mind up about that. Taylor decided at the end of the day not to take the stand in her own defence, which of course was her right. In the first phase of her trial, the jury deliberated for 45 minutes before finding Taylor guilty of the first-degree intentional homicide of Chad, the mutilation of his corpse, and of course the third-degree sexual assault, which, by the way, her lawyers tried to get thrown out on the grounds that Shad was already dead. In the second phase of the trial, the jury deliberated for just 55 minutes before they dismissed the insanity plea, stating she was not suffering from a mental disease or defect at the time of murder. So, guilty, guilty, guilty. So, although I wouldn't deny that Taylor had some issues with her mental health, even if the medical professionals involved in this case couldn't agree on a diagnosis, I agree with the jury that at the time of the murder, she was not insane. A little crazy, but not insane. But in saying that, watching her demeanour and presentation throughout the trial perplexed me. I was in two minds all the way through it, really. Was she responding to unseen stimuli or hallucinations, or was it that she was just found the whole thing amusing and that she was just a callous, cold-hearted killer? Let me know your thoughts on this case. Sentencing is due to take place on the 26th of September 2023, that's next month, and I will be on it like a Scotch bonnet. I want to say that my thoughts and prayers are with all the victims involved in this case, and I mean no disrespect or distress to anyone. Please take a moment to like and subscribe, to check out my Patreon page, and with that, I'd just like to say my thoughts and prayers are with Shad and all his family and loved ones. Toodaloo.